Hi, this is Tom Cardwell, and you're listening to the Brutally Delicious podcast.
Brutally Delicious!
Hey, you're listening to the Brutally Delicious podcast. I'm Bruce.
And I'm Chris.
Today we've got Tom Cardwell. Many of you may not know him, but he is a university lecturer, a painter, and a researcher currently studying for a PhD project, which he uses paintings to examine the customized cutoffs worn by heavy metal fans. And you're going to love this title. His thesis is titled Still Life and Death Metal Painting the Battle Jacket.
So last week, we were talking about Skid Row and how Sebastian Bach had said, hey, come join me. And
Yes.
no one would, except for Rob Affuso, the original drummer, is in.
I saw you sent me that, and I was kind of stoked about it. That's pretty cool. You also sent me a lot of stuff that made me sad, because here I am sitting in my bedroom doing a podcast, and half the world is recovering from 4 days of Hellfest.
Oh, God. Did that not look awesome or what?
Yeah, so we're probably not as cool or as metal as we think we are, because we were not at Hellfest. I'm sitting in the bedroom here.
No, my good friend Andy was sending me photos and mocking me the whole time.
Yeah.
I was like, you asshole.
I know. I was just going, my whole feed was just filled with people with pictures and videos and, hey, look who I ran into at Hellfest. I'm like, wow, that's great.
Oh, man, it looked amazing, didn't it? I didn't
Oh,
know.
looks killer.
I didn't know Gojira was playing Hellfest. I didn't see them on the bill, but apparently they played.
See, there's another. Let's see how many of the same ones we can get back into
Here,
the conversation.
Can I just jab it a little deeper? Just jab it a little deeper.
They did have a nice set list. I was pretty excited about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of good bands on there. But Manowar didn't play.
I was actually reading that this morning on Blabbermouth.
There's so many rumors going around about what happened.
I've heard a couple. They say they didn't cancel it, that it was canceled by the promoter. But I mean, I guess we'll never know.
No. But the promoter was saying Manowar was complaining about the stage size.
Right.
So, like, who knows?
Do you know they're in the Guinness Book of World Records for the loudest concert ever? That's a weird piece of trivia.
I love loud concerts, but I wonder how many people suffered hearing damage at that concert.
But it was all in the name of getting it to the Guinness Book of World Records. So, I mean, you got to weigh the pros and the cons, and at least they're in, right?
Yeah, they're in.
That's what makes the difference.
So who runs that frickin' book anyways? The Guinness Book of World Records. Is it the beer company?
I never really gave it any thought, but I don't think it has anything to do with Guinness beer. And I don't know, like, because you can make up stuff. Like, I could just say I'm going to pick my toenails like a million times today, and if it's not a record already in there, then they come by and certify me, picking my toenails, and then it's in. Until somebody else decides, hey, that jackass did that same thing. Now I'm going to go do it, try and beat it, and do it 1,000,001 or something. So
I'm going to pick my nose and make a snot ball 1 foot large.
So, I know it's very weird you're saying ball, but I was out in Kansas City once doing some sound thing, and I had nothing to do one day, and I came across like, whoa, what is it to do here in Kansas City? And the largest ball of twine, it's in the Guinness Book of World Records, and I actually went and saw like the largest ball of twine, which is like the most effed up thing to possibly think about doing.
What are you doing? Like, if you have that much time on your hands to make a ball of twine that big, imagine what you could do for the world if you took that energy and actually put it into something that was fucking useful.
You're right. But it also says something about me and the other people that went to see it. Like, I was like, well, I got an idea. I'm going to go see this big ball of twine.
Oh, dude, in Canada, they have the world's largest Easter egg in a town called Vegreville. And people come from all over the place to see this Easter egg. It's weird, man. It's like this town. I don't know how big it is now, but it used to be a village, like so small. And there's a big frickin' Easter egg in the middle of the town.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to tell you one quick story, and then we'll get to music-related stuff.
You got it.
So So I'm always intrigued now that I told you about my twine thing, but I'm always intrigued about doing off the beaten path kind of touristy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So a friend of mine gave me this book, and I think there's one for every city. You could probably get one for DC. It's called Weird and Wacky. Mine is Virginia, obviously. So it's Weird and Wacky Virginia. And it's got all these like weird things you can find. So some guy, like 3 hours from here, decided to build an exact replica of Stonehenge out of styrofoam, and he called it Foamhenge.
Where is this?
It's just west of me, probably. So check it out. So one day, I had been dying to go. It was like on my bucket list of things to do one summer, and me and my son were traveling all over the place.
Yeah.
So one summer, I got my wife in the car. We went out to somewhere else, and I'm like, I'm going to find Foamhenge. So we found it, but apparently it's closed now, and it's like on some guy's private farm. But he closed it, and we were like, shit! I didn't come all this way to not see it. So we jumped the fence in this field and like ran about 3/4 of a mile up, and there in the middle of this clearing is an exact replica. I mean, because I've been to the real one, exact replica out of styrofoam, dude.
No way, dude. This thing, I just Googled this. Googled this, and it's 30 minutes from me.
Oh, you got to go. But it's closed. You just got to hop the fence, and you won't get arrested, because when I got in there finally, there was like a dozen or more people. They were all just like hanging out, taking pictures and stuff. It's totally the footage, the square footage, the circle, the size of them. Everything is perfect. It's painted gray. It's styrofoam. And it's called Foamhenge.
Dude, I had no idea. That is like, I almost bought a house near that where it is. Cox Farms in Centerville. Oh my God, I gotta go see this.
You could drive right by it because it's closed, but my wife parked like on the dirt road. And she's like, you're not really going to hop the fence. I said, I didn't drive 3 hours and wait all summer long to not see it. I'm going.
Oh, yeah.
So we jumped the fence, me and my son, and we like crawled up the side, and there it is. As soon as you hit the clearing, there was all these hippies when I got there. It was a Saturday afternoon, just like hanging out in front of Stonehenge. Foamhenge.
See, this is why I need to meet more people in Virginia, because I learn about stupid shit like this.
Get the book. You can go to Barnes and Noble. You don't even have to buy it. Just peruse it while you're drinking coffee. Weird and Wacky Virginia. We found so many things in it that we've gone and visited. You'd be like, what the hell? I didn't even know this. Why would somebody do this? There's a town somewhere near you where a bunch of you got to think I'm making this shit up, but a bunch of the midgets from, give me the movie, hurry up, The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
They formed a town, and it's a miniature town. Like everything is their size. It's now defunct, but it was like right up by you, and it's probably still available. Midgetville. Look up Midgetville right now.
Oh my God. Okay. I gotta look at this up, because right now I'm just dying. I now know what my weekend is gonna consider or consist of.
Midgetville in like Northern Virginia or DC. I don't know which one it's called.
Midgetville. Wikipedia.
You found it, right?
Yeah. I'm just trying to see Fairfax County. Oh my God, it's right beside me. It's literally like 15 minutes from here.
I think it's gone, but maybe it's just gone and not a town anymore. You might be able to go see it.
Oh no, it looks like it's gone.
But that's the things that so we had a whole summer where me and my son were like, let's pick this book and do something weird every freaking day while we were off. On our days off, I'd go through the book and go, all right, this is what we're doing today. Like there's something in Richmond about the vampire. There's like this vampire grave, the Great Richmond Vampire. And we went there and found it in the middle of this Hollywood cemetery that's all like presidents and stuff. Right in the corner, tucked in neatly, is this vampire guy. He's got a whole legend.
Okay, it looks like Midgetville is still there.
See?
Except somebody bought the land and they now own it. So they're maintaining it, but they're not letting people see it. But people are sneaking on to see it.
That's what I told you. Like Stonehenge, the guy's got it private, but everybody jumps the fence and goes.
You know, talking about Foamhenge, I was watching. I was watching Spinal Tap.
Oh yeah,
it was on TV the other day.
13 inches instead of 13 feet.
Or the part where they're trying to find their venue and they're like lost in the back and they're going all around.
Hello, Cleveland.
Or they end up playing a puppet show. It's just
that's good stuff. All right, so I guess we need to. Well, I wanted to do two things. One, we need to get to the metal stuff because we're going to be talking to this guy in about 5 minutes. But Second, I think we need to send out some, I don't know if you saw the news, but Dave Mustaine's got throat cancer.
Oh, dude, terrible.
Yeah, so we're going to send some positive vibes. And if you're a prayer or a good vibe sender, let's all send our vibes out to Dave. All right, so did you get a chance to look at it?
Sorry,
I didn't even know what.
I was just meditating. I was meditating for Dave.
Yeah, I didn't know what to say about that, so I moved along.
The look on your face is classic.
All right, have you looked at any of Mr. Tom Cardwell stuff? So he's done a bunch of. He's a professor again, so sort of like our buddy Mr. Viren Swami, but he's doing his PhD on. Actually, I'm going to read it to you right here. It says, where Dutch still life painting meets heavy metal, the art of the battle jacket. So not only is he doing his PhD thesis on those battle jackets, which I've always been intrigued by when you go to those shows. I don't have one now. I mean, as a kid, I had a denim jacket with painting the buttons on it, but nothing as elaborate as they get now. And then he also has an art gallery where I want to talk to him about because I believe he's painting them too. He's got an art gallery in London right now.
Like, these are ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what I found. I was like, man, this guy's great. Let's see if we can get him on and talk to him. So I think this is going to be kind of cool. I'm interested to talk to him because we talked to our buddy Viren Swami there, and he had that whole scholarly take on the metal world, and this is going to be another rabbit hole we can go down.
I want one of these jackets.
Hell yeah.
Like,
I'm looking at
this Judas Priest one is just unbelievable.
Yeah, well, you can't have that because I already was looking at it and claimed it first. You can have the Motorhead one.
What about this other one? Is this the Grateful Dead? Is this what this is?
Oh, I know. I don't know what that is. That reggae looking one down there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe Jerry. I guess. Yeah, I guess it is the Dead, right? Because it's got. I don't know. Yes, that's pretty fabulous. Hey, Chris, meet Thomas. Thomas, meet Chris.
Hey, Thomas. Hi. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, call me Tom.
All right, Tom. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I know it's late in the day over there.
Yeah, not too bad, actually. We're in the afternoon, so it's pretty civilized.
Is it tea time?
Not, yeah, probably. I don't really drink it, but yeah.
Sorry. That's all I really know about being over in Europe. So I got a couple questions to start. First off, have you gotten to any of the European festivals yet this summer that we're all drooling about over here?
No, I haven't been to any festivals yet this year. I'm just looking at a couple. There's a couple of good ones coming up. Bloodstock is always good, and there's one in Birmingham called Supersonic where we've got thesis and Godflesh and people like that. It's looking pretty good. But I guess being in London, I'm pretty spoilt for any bands who come over tend to come through here. So we get everybody really.
We were looking at some pictures of our friends from Hellfest over the weekend and drooling about it because I wish I was there. That's some kind of festival going on there.
Yeah, that's amazing over there. Yeah, and you got Wacken and all that kind of stuff. Europe is very, very good.
Yeah, that's like the Holy Grail, Wacken or Wacken or however you pronounce it.
Yeah. It's like Glastonbury. I think the tickets go within minutes. I think I've even heard of people being at the festival and they release the tickets for the next year during the festival, and people are kind of in their tents booking on for the next year and that kind of stuff. I don't know if that's true.
Really?
That's what I heard. Someone told me that. Yeah, I don't know. I've never been, but
right.
Yeah, it looks like it sells out fast. I was looking on their website the other day, and it said there's no tickets left, but there may be some through resellers if you contact them. I was like, okay.
Wow.
A friend of mine is photographing, being a photographer at Wacken. And he's like, anyone want to be a cameraman for the weekend? His Facebook was just jammed full of yes.
Yeah, I wonder how he picked that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Thomas, we didn't get you here to talk about festivals, but go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into doing the battle jacket sort of project, thesis, research.
Yeah. Well, I guess like many people of my age, I grew up. So the first music I was listening to was mid to late 80s. So I grew up with jackets, and really that was my first experience of metal. Even before I'd heard much metal, I saw people wearing jackets. So I'd be on the school bus and kids would have, Iron Maiden or Slayer on their jacket. And, when you're kind of 11, you think that, wow, that looks really cool. I need to listen to that band. And that was in the days when you still had to go and find a shop that stocked those records, and then you actually had to buy some vinyl and get it home and listen to it on your parents' record player. So, I think I bought Megadeth's cover of No More Mr. Nice Guy was my first 7-inch.
Right.
Kind of from there, it wasn't just the jackets. So I started making my own jackets, and just being really interested in other people doing that. And then I guess the kind of whole thing of making battle jackets was around a bit less in the 90s because of all the stuff that happened with grunge and, just the metal scene taking a different turn. And apart from some of the stuff that was happening in Norway and Scandinavia with black metal, etc., which is pretty well documented, and especially at the moment with the Lords of Chaos movie and all that kind of stuff, that was something else. But I think certainly for the more what we could call the metal mainstream, jacket making seemed to dip a bit during that decade, and then after 2000 it started to come back. And I mean, my perception is that as a lot of the bands that were big in the 80s kind of had resurgences, so all the kind of Bay Area thrash bands and through to people like Iron Maiden, and then of course later a lot of the kind of hair metal bands, all of that kind of came back. And a lot of those guys got back together or started putting out a lot more music. And it seems like the jacket making then, kind of becomes a lot more popular again. And I think the internet helped as well. So I think people being able to see what other people were doing online, post jackets and look at other people's jackets on galleries, and of course buy patches much more easily. It's not like the days where you had to buy the patch at the show or find some store that would sell it somewhere. So anyway, that's kind of how I was first into it. But then as an artist, I've been making paintings of things that to me were kind of like physical documents that had some kind of cultural resonance. And I'd made a series of paintings of suits of armor in about 2011, 2012. And then it just seemed like the battle jackets were a kind of natural progression of that. They just seemed to be something that, to me, had a lot of the same characteristics as a kind of decorative suit of armor in some ways. And it was around the time I was just thinking about doing a PhD, and I talked about it with my team, and it seemed like that would be a good thing to do. So it kind of came from there, really. So that's a long answer to a short question.
No, I appreciate it. Chris?
That's awesome. I'm like you, where the battle jacket really, I didn't even know what it was called when I was growing up. But the battle jacket was something that I always looked at and thought, oh man, where did they get all those patches? And then I started trying to find head shops where I could go get something, or, and then my parents would never let me make one. But I had the patches anyways.
Did you ever make it?
No, I've never had one.
Okay.
No,
it's never too late, right?
Because when the 90s came around, I was in grade 10 or 11, and I kind of fell into the grunge thing.
Sure.
Yeah, we're sorry.
Yeah.
No, well, I think everyone did that to an extent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had one growing up, but it was never a jacket. I mean, it was never the vest like most people have now. It was a full jacket. And in New York at the time, people like in high school that were real artists, like I guess yourself, would paint them. So I had like Mob Rules acrylically painted in that little panel on the back.
Amazing.
And then there were no patches, so we had like buttons. I don't know if a button thing was big over in Europe, but there was all these buttons. It was like a little record store that told buttons of Nikki Sixx or whatever. So I guess if I fell in a lake, I'd probably drown because it was loaded with spikes and buttons. But that was my version of the battle jacket. I wish I still had that painting because it was absolutely awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to have seen that. And actually, because interviewed a lot of people about their jackets, and I've photographed a lot of jackets as well as making the paintings. And some of the ones that I'm most interested in are those where people have either hand painted, or actually a tradition which seemed to happen around the late 70s before the patches were being mass manufactured, is a lot of people, at least in England, were hand embroidering their jackets for themselves.
Oh, wow.
So
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, there are amazing jackets I've seen where people have done the whole, multiple logos, and it must be hundreds of hours of stitching, let alone sewing on a patch. It's actually creating the whole thing through embroidery, and often people who had not, didn't have any kind of training in that. So I think that kind of hand making is one of the most interesting parts of the tradition, actually.
I didn't know that. That is amazing.
Yeah,
I would love to see some of those jackets.
Yeah, I can. You can have a look at the in my article. I've got some examples, which is on my website there, so you can just have a look.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through it right now to see.
Do you think that this the battle jacket has evolved into some sort of uniform? I guess loosely. To an extent, I think it's becoming. I'm seeing around a lot of people who are obviously fairly new to making them, and are kind of picking it up as it's become more popular, and as I say, through kind of what you can see on the internet. I think in a sense they're becoming, probably if you went out and sampled 100 jackets at a festival or a concert, I think festivals are the most interesting because you get a mix of people, rather than just there to see one band. Right.
And there is perhaps a kind of a similar look to jackets that have been made fairly recently, because people are tending to have the same patches or the same kind of patches from the same places. So in a way, maybe it's become a bit of a uniform. And I know that some of the big metal merch stores sell these kind of pre-made, so you could buy like a cut-off shirt or a vest already with a print on the back of, so they'll do one for Motorhead and they'll do one for Maiden,
right,
they'll do Metallica, and so you can kind of pick it up off the peg and then add your own stuff to it. So in that sense, like everything these days, it's become a little bit, it's possible to buy it a bit more off the peg, which, I wouldn't. I know some people would be quite against that, and I think it's not as good as doing it from scratch, but I certainly wouldn't want to, look down on however anyone wants to put one together. Everyone's got to start with something, right? So I think, but in a sense of a uniform, in a way, perhaps it's become, but probably no more than it was in the early 80s, mid 80s, I would say. Not really, no more than
right.
Punks making a jacket with safety pins and bondage gear and stuff. That was as much a uniform as this is now, I think. And still, I would say that you go to a show or a festival and probably only about 1 in 20, say, people will be wearing a battle jacket. Most people would just go for a t-shirt, and it's still not, every fan's got one, I would say.
Right. So I've got 2 questions, and I'm hogging the conversation here. Sorry, Chris. But
yeah,
I have a short attention span, so while they're in my head. First, are you finding in your research that there's no age limit? I know you said Chris is not too old to start now. So, people from, like my kids' age all the way up to me or older are still involved in this battle jacket phenomena?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that there's a real range, that there are, I've met fairly young fans of maybe early teens who've got really excellent jackets, and in some case, one kid told me that he got a lot of the patches from his dad, and so there's that kind of, in some cases, it's even being kind of passed on. So I don't think it's about that you need to be older to have a good jacket, but often some of the really good jackets are from people who've been making them for years and years, and the patches really do reflect that time they've spent going to shows and listening to different music through their years of their life. So I think, yeah, there's all kinds of people making them, and I've noticed that it's becoming, I guess, like the whole of the metal scene, it's becoming a lot more diverse as well, in terms of, it's no longer just sort of youngish white men making jackets. There's all kinds of different people. It's really becoming a much more diverse scene, and I guess that's the whole metal scene generally, really. But definitely you see that reflected in jacket culture as well.
One thing that I was thinking about, excuse me, as we go through this conversation is like metal music has always been kind of an outlet for people that had more kind of extreme, not views, but they're attracted to a more extreme art form, and the jacket kind of symbolized that personality in a way for me. How do you feel about stores starting to like mass manufacture these jackets and sell them online?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been really interested in the way that I guess there's been a wave of, certainly over here, and I would imagine it's been the same in North America as well. There's been a wave of the mainstream fashion labels using metal merch as a kind of as a look over the past couple of years. So, and I actually did a paper on this in December called They're Selling Slayer Shirts in Primark, which Primark is a store like Walmart, and that kind of, it's
absolutely.
that kind of level of. So I'm really interested in that. And again, I think on the one hand, there's tons of stuff online of for and against whether this is, the ultimate kind of sacrilege for a metal fan to see these bands kind of, license their stuff to these big chains. But on the other hand, I think it's always interesting to stand back, and whatever our view is on that is to say, well, why is that happening? There's something really interesting there. And for me, there's some interesting stuff happening as well with the way that, say, a lot of hip hop stars were wearing a lot of band jackets and T-shirts, and
I was just going to bring that up. I was just going to bring that up.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just wondering, in the hip hop genre, it's also kind of well, not all of it, but a lot of it is also quite extreme in terms of content, lyrical content and musical content. Right. It actually shares quite a lot with heavy metal in a way. And
I guess. Go on.
And I've noticed that some of the clothing wear, although it's different, it shares some similar imagery with metal a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, I guess, there's probably, as you say, in both cases, there's an element of any music that's kind of pushing the boundaries lyrically and of something that's more extreme. And, it's not new that there's been kind of crossovers. I guess we can think of Body Count and, Walk This Way, Aerosmith doing that collaboration with Run DMC and all that. So there's been those kind of crossovers since the early 90s. And even some of the, I guess, like the Beastie Boys had that kind of link up, and then all those New York hardcore bands like Biohazard, and so there's been these crossovers, which I guess, as you say, it's something to do with people wanting to not just listen to music that's about something extreme, but also representing that. And I had an interesting discussion with a friend on this recently about there was a Cannibal. Sorry, it wasn't Cannibal Corpse. I'm trying to think of the band. There was a T-shirt that was allegedly banned for a while for being super offensive, and I guess we can all think of examples of some of the more extreme shirts that are out there. So I think partly there'll always be this kind of desire on the part of a fan to say, I'm putting something out there that can't be easily kind of looked at, and even is difficult for people to look at. So there's something confrontational, and again, I think that's probably in the same spirit as what the punks were doing in the 70s, deliberately wearing things that they knew people would find offensive, and that was kind of the point. Yeah. And I think that obviously as metal as a scene has grown and matured, and the people in the scene, it spans all ages now as the people who were probably starting it out have got older. I think that maybe, most of us probably get a bit more mellow as we get older, but we might still like some of that same music. So another guy actually, I posted an image on Instagram of a jacket I painted that had a creator back patch with the head with the skin's been peeled back and you can see the brain, and it's quite a graphic image. And one of my friends posted on there that a friend of his had worn that shirt to his grandmother's funeral. And, in a way that's kind of hilarious, but it probably wasn't hilarious at the time. And it's maybe this mixture of what at 17 or 18 you think is acceptable kind of thing to wear. And I guess it's all about context as well. So I've often had interesting conversations with people about where and when they would wear their jackets. So, some people would just wear them to a show. Other people would wear them really day in, day out. And the whole thing of, would you wear your jacket to get a flight? Would you walk through security? Would that be a problem? And increasingly, probably these days, I would say not, a lot less so because of the diversity of what's acceptable to wear in culture in general. However, I guess there are certain images now that are offensive that perhaps wouldn't have been 20 or 30 years ago. The types of things that are and also it depends where you are. It really depends where you are. So there's a really interesting documentary that premiered in London recently about the Syrian metal scene. And over there, to wear anything that marks you out as being a metal fan is really risky because it's not allowed. So, I guess a lot is context really in London these days, or I guess in New York or in LA or, any major Western city. Probably you have to go quite far to really shock people in terms of wearing metal imagery. And maybe that's why some of the extreme bands push it further and further. But I don't know if I've really answered your question. I think I've gone on a tangent there.
That's okay. I love it. You said something earlier about that guy wearing it to his grandmother's funeral, and it reminded me of I was probably grade 8 or 9, and I got a Motley Crue t-shirt with a pentagram on it. And I had to hide it from my parents so they didn't know I had it. But one day I was in Catholic school and they took me to church, and I was like, that's it. I'm wearing this to church. And it was like a big moment for me. And it kind of made me feel like free, like not part of everything that was around me. It kind of, I don't even know how to describe it really, but I got suspended for it.
From where? From school?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because I wore it. It was a school trip to the church. As if I needed that. But I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm doing this because this is who I am. I like Motley Crue. And you can't tell me I'm not allowed to. So I wore it, and I remember this nun just went up one side of me and down the other and told me to put a jacket on, and I was screaming and yelling at her. I was pretty young. But so imagery on clothing sure does have an impact, not only just on like, this is how I feel, but it also helps you express something that maybe you have a hard time doing with words sometimes.
Exactly. And I think what you've just described is really interesting. And I bet most or many metal fans can relate to that, or have an experience, maybe not so striking as that, but of, first wearing something and maybe their family not liking it, or, being out in public and someone says, hey, what are you doing wearing that? And then, on the other hand, I think that's part of the attraction of metal is because it is so it's so blatant. It's not subtle. There's nothing subtle about the Motley Crue pentagram T-shirt. There's nothing subtle about the shirt I was trying to think of earlier was Cradle of Filth. I remember now.
Yes, I remember that
now. With the nun on the front, and that of course is deliberately trying to push those buttons of exactly what you've just described. It's really trying to shove it in the face of the whole kind of what was it, the Parents Music Resource Centre and all of that stuff.
Yes.
In the was that the 80s or the early 90s? I can't remember.
Yeah, that was that whole satanic panic scene. I grew up on that, so yeah, I'm very familiar
with Tipper Gore.
So, yeah, exactly, and so it's obviously the bands are then going to kind of up the ante with that stuff. But I think certainly thinking about going back to for myself when I was describing kind of seeing people wear this stuff when I was reasonably young, and to me that was it was a little bit threatening. Seeing a kind of I remember seeing the first Iron Maiden t-shirt I think I saw, which had, I think it was Seventh Son of a Seventh Son with, Eddie's kind of decapitated head with a fist coming through it. And, 11 years old, you're like, whoa, that is kind of amazingly cool, but also a little bit frightening. And you think, what kind of person would wear this? It's kind of like, and then you get the kind of Metallica, I remember Damage Incorporated, you got the skull with the clubs shoved through it, which is like this kind of, what the Vikings used to do when they conquered people, so it's really tapping into something very, very, this kind of, atavistic kind of violence, which for parts of the world, at least, are not part of daily life, but for certainly, when you're younger, so there's this kind of attraction to, obviously you don't probably want to be a part of any of that for real, but it's in the same way that people might want to watch a horror movie or identify with something that seems a little bit scarier or tougher or different to how they feel themselves. So I think there's a lot of trying to kind of project how you would like to be a bit more through, say, putting on that t-shirt or making the jacket. And then, I think there's something really interesting in that. And that is a big part of my interest through the project of talking to people and finding out why they first made a jacket or wore a t-shirt or whatever it was. But I think that connection between the image and the piece of clothing and the music is really fundamental, actually. I think it's really important.
Why do you think the phenomenon of battle jackets is just specific to the metal hard rock world and not, why don't you find them in pop or country, or is there an answer for that or a reason for that?
I don't know. And I guess if we leave aside some of the stuff I was just talking about, which has happened recently with other genres kind of aping metal style in a fashionable way. And as an aside to that, I don't know if you guys have come across the Taylor Swift tour shirt that looks like a black metal shirt.
What?
No, not at all.
Oh, I gotta see this.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, that's a whole other thing. But, I think generally, absolutely, you're right that most other genres, you might have a t-shirt, but certainly the idea of making a jacket, occasionally, I do see jackets that are not metal specific. So I saw one that had stuff like the Beatles and Pink Floyd on it, but mixed in with a lot of hard rock patches and punk patches and things like that. So I think you're right that it's pretty much predominantly metal and rock. And I don't know if there's any kind of causal connection, like there's a reason that it had to be metal, but it's perhaps circumstantial in the way that the scene evolved. And thinking about maybe the connections into the beginning of metal in the late 1960s through a big part of that being biker culture and what are called the patch clubs, the Hells Angels, etc., who were customizing jackets for the clubs since post-World War II. And in a way that, I think, was probably influenced by military patches. So if you look at, for example, motorcycle divisions from World War II, and they would have these insignia on the back and that kind of thing. So it comes through that, but also the whole kind of hippie counterculture thing, you only have to look at Easy Rider or something like that, and you can see the kind of seeds of that. So I think because all of those things fed into the beginnings of the metal scene, I guess the patches came through that, and then the jacket became a thing that just became connected to metal, particularly. But I don't know if there's a reason why it has to be. I mean, perhaps there's something. I think there's a lot to do with the DIY aesthetic and that idea that you're not going to wear something that looks really kind of carefully produced. And there's something. As one person I interviewed put it, it has to have a bit of chaos about it. It shouldn't look too perfectly designed, too neat. There's often that, patches are hand sewn on and perhaps quite roughly sewn on, and you get into the kind of crust punk scene and people are sewing it on with white thread so that the thread shows up and stuff like that. So I think there's an element of metal having this kind of rhetoric of not being not wanting to conform to nicety and wanting something to look a bit raw and a bit kind of like the idea that you're going to wear the same jacket whatever the rest of fashion is doing. You're not going to change the style of what you wear, etc. So there's that kind of thing to it,
even if it's 100 degrees out.
Right. Yeah. So you can.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I saw them wearing them like at Hellfest. It's 100 degrees with 1 million people, and there's everybody out there in their jackets.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the great thing, I guess, and why the cutoff is popular. And again, I think this comes from bikers because you can wear a cutoff over nothing, or you can wear it over a t-shirt or a leather jacket or another jacket. So and I know some metal fans have different vests of different sizes. So some they would wear in the summer just over t-shirts, and some they'd wear in the winter when you need a thick jacket underneath. I think there's that kind of adaptability, but I don't know if there's reasons that it should only be metal fans who make the jackets. But I think now it's become such a connection, such a strong connection that that it's there to stay, really, at least for the foreseeable.
Okay.
I just looked up that Taylor Swift shirt, and that is a sick shirt.
He just sent it to me. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What's the marketing ploy with that? I mean, how does crying about your ex-boyfriend fit in with this T-shirt, I wonder?
Yeah, I guess that's the really fascinating thing of where there's become this kind of detachment between metal as a style and what the content might be, So, and I think this is in large parts come through some of the streetwear brands. Can I mention brand names or not?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, okay. So the most well-known one would be Supreme, who've done, they've done the Slayer collaboration, they've done Black Sabbath, but then they've also done like Morrissey shirts, and they've done, so they're really making the point that we're not about one particular. It almost doesn't matter what the content is. It's about connecting the brand to something and saying, we'll kind of claim this for our own, So I think rather than those brands trying to cash in on the cool of metal, they're almost doing the opposite and saying, we're so cool, we can make anything else cool. And I think that's the same thing that happens with the high street fashion, doing these shirts and the Taylor Swift shirt, etc. I think it's about saying, it's about stating the importance of the brand and actually saying that we're gonna assimilate this what's meant to be an extreme style and assimilate it into anything else, and so you get this kind of interesting kind of postmodern detachment between the message and the media and the thing that's carrying the message, and it's but it's certainly kind of confusing. And then you get the kind of old school metal fan who will just have none of that and say no, that just that should not be done. And maybe they're right. I don't know.
I don't know either. But it's cool. I look at it. I'm like, that's a rad shirt.
Yeah. They even lifted the font types. I mean, it looks like a death metal logo.
Oh yeah. And I mean, these things, you can get these free font downloads all over the place online. So if you wanted to go and make your own death metal shirt, it's not too hard to do now. But certainly, some good designers done a clever job there. Yeah, for sure.
I'm gonna do one for Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Hey, death Tom, do you have a battle jacket?
Yeah, I have a couple.
You do. What's your favorite one, and who's on the back?
Okay, so the one I would wear most of the time is the back patch is Mastodon. Nice. So I'm a big Mastodon fan, and that's one I made myself because they actually don't release a lot of patches. So I have a kind of homemade one on there, and then I have a bunch of the stuff that I mentioned earlier that got me into metal. So all the kind of Bay Area bands, Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, Exodus, Testament, those kind of guys, and try and stick with people I've been to see as well, so that the jacket is like this kind of charting of the bands you've been to see. Iron Maiden are on there a lot. Paradise Lost, who are a band from Leeds, kind of doomy band, and I should mention Gojira as well. I have Gojira on there.
Yeah. Now wait a second. Hold on.
I know you guys love them.
Hold on.
I know you love Gojira.
Hold on 1 second. Did Chris set you up for that? Is he sending you a message to go ahead and say that?
No, I just listened to some of your other episodes, and I heard you like Gojira.
Bruce was giving me a hard time earlier today. He's like, "We can't talk about Gojira anymore." I was like, "Well, they played Hellfest."
Tom,
You really got to see them though. They're honestly, they're really good. They're really, really good.
Live,
Especially
there's no better metal band live right now.
Oh man.
Sorry, Bruce.
Yeah.
Tom, you're killing me.
They're touring here next week, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yes! That was great. And that's a good way to do your research too, because that just came out of nowhere.
Maybe we should just end it here, Bruce. Right here.
Nice. I'm pretty sure he just sent you an email to say that or something. That was a good setup.
No, it was literally. I heard you talking about it with one of the other guests, and I thought.
I think it's on every episode. We end up talking about Gojira, hair metal, and there's something else that comes up a lot.
The weather, Celsius versus Fahrenheit.
Oh yeah, Celsius versus Fahrenheit. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Where I know you've taken. I don't even want to talk to you anymore. I know you've taken your love of this into like painting, and now you've got an art gallery or showing as well. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. So my PhD was actually based in fine art. So as well as a thesis, I made a set of paintings, and I showed those in 2017. And then, so a couple of them have just been in LA actually at a show out there. So that they're being kind of shown. And then I'm have some going to be in a show for the Home and Metal exhibit in Birmingham a little bit later on in September. And so, yeah, the paintings are kind of something that a big part of the project for me. I guess that's the way that I kind of examine the jackets and process them. So making the painting of the jacket is a big part of a way of kind of understanding them, I suppose, for me. And producing something that, because there's a number of people doing kind of archives of photos of jackets, which is, they're brilliant. There's some great examples out there. But for me, not really being a photographer, I might use the photograph as part of the process. But really what's interesting to me is to sit down and make a painting of the jacket. And there's something about taking spending a long time doing that it feels to me a little bit like the medieval monk illuminating the manuscript or something. that kind of devotional labor.
Right. Nice.
That's great.
Chris, you got anything else?
I don't know, man. I really appreciate this conversation. It was amazing.
That was great.
Yeah. Especially the Gojira part.
No. Hey, if anybody listening is interested in your work, where can they find it, and where can they find your paper if they want to get? Yeah,
so it's all available on my website. So it's just tomcardwell.uk, and that you can get PDFs of the papers on there, including the thesis, and all my artworks on there as well.
All right, I encourage everyone to do that because this has been a great conversation. I appreciate your time, Tom.
Oh, thank you. It's great to talk to you guys, and it's a really exciting podcast, and the documentaries are great as well. So I've really enjoyed looking at the stuff.
Appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time.
No problem.
Thanks again, Tom. Have a good one, man.
You rock, my friend. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
What a guy.
That was a great interview.
He's just so full of information.
Not only do I like doing the metal stuff that we do, speaking to the artists, but I really like this research stuff that's done on the fringes and on the outside that, people doing different things in the metal world. I think is really fun.
Well, it even helps me understand myself more by talking to people like that. Like, why are we doing the things that we're doing? What? I mean, let's not get into a psychology podcast. This is supposed to be about nothing, but I'm just spilling my soul about going to church wearing a pentagram, you know?
I like that he did his research and he threw that Gojira in right at the end. I was like, you son of a bitch. He must have been waiting the whole podcast for that, because that was like the last thing he said. Oh, and don't forget my Gojira patch. God damn it.
I'll tell you what.
That was great.
If Gojira come to the DC area, I'll buy you a ticket. And then
I'll go.
You have to see him live. Once you do, then you'll be fine.
If you're listening to this, I suggest you go check out his artwork, paintings, read that paper, because it's really interesting. As Chris said, it gives us kind of an insight into why we're doing the weird shit that we do.
Amen.
Globally.
Yeah. It seems to be all over the place, you know?
Yeah.
Like a friend of mine, Ken, just went down and filmed and photographed a Cuban metal festival.
Wow.
I didn't even know there was metal in Cuba.
No.
And they don't have access to the internet, the outside world. He went down there. They're all wearing like battle jackets and black T-shirts. And how does this happen? Why does it happen? It's amazing.
Pretty cool stuff. So yeah, that was great. And Edward, your CD will be coming this week or whenever I can get to the post office, probably on Friday. So thank you for being our maybe fourth listener, whatever we got.
All right.
Well, thanks for listening. Have a great week.
You too, and it's brutally delicious outside.
Yeah, I'm going to go get some sun. I'll see you later.
All right, cheers.
Bye.
Hello out there.
Yes, hello out there, everyone. I'm Hal Schwartz.
And I'm Flynn McLean. Together we host None But the Brave, a podcast dedicated to the music and career of Bruce Springsteen.
Bruce and E Street Band are on tour right now for the first time in 6 years, and we're taking a detailed look at what's happening on stage in our bi-weekly episodes.
We've also been recently joined by some very exciting guests, including rock journalist Warren Zanes and Stephen Hayden, Backstreet's Magazine founder Charles Cross, and Barstool's Kirk Minahan.
If you're a diehard Springsteen fan, this is the show for you.
So please subscribe to None But the Brave on your favorite podcasting platform, and we hope to see you further on up the road.
Thank you so much. We'll be seeing you.